Everyone, and welcome to day two of the Virtual Island Summit. Thank you so much for joining this session. We just wrapped up a fantastic discussion on marine conservation in St. Lucia and the Caribbean, and now we shift the focus to energy. My name is Michaela Johnson, and I am the Impact and Growth Manager here at Island Innovation, and I'm joining you today from the beautiful Twin Island state of Trinidad and Tobago. Island Innovation is a sustainable development consultancy, and our primary focus is on islands. Our services include events, strategic communications, and capacity building. We are trusted by clients around the globe, and if you're interested in learning a bit more about our work, please reach out to us using the contact information made available in the chat. I'm very happy to be presenting this session titled Charting a Pathway to a Geothermal Future. Before we begin, you should see a poll appear now on your screen. Please let us know where you are connecting from and what industry and sector you belong to. So far in the chat, I see we have people joining us from the Netherlands, from Trinidad and Tobago, Haiti, Colombia. It's absolutely fantastic to see such a wide representation of people. I definitely invite you to make use of the chat function, introduce yourself, and of course, make any comments during today's session. Please make sure that you use the Q&A function for any questions that you might have for our panelists. And of course, we'll do our best to make sure that we can address as many of them as possible when we get to the Q&A section. All right, let's take a quick look at the poll results. I see the majority of persons are joining us from North America. We have strong representation from the Caribbean, from Europe, high representation from private sector, followed by government, NGOs, and academia. Welcome, everyone. Without further ado, I will hand you over now to our moderator for this session, Mr. Ernie Stapleton, GeoBuild Project Manager at the OECS Commission. Ernie, the floor is all yours.
Good day, everyone, and again, welcome to this particular session, a very important session as we discuss geothermal energy, charting a pathway to a geothermal future. It's a very important topic, especially for where I am at this point in time, being the project manager for the GeoBuild program at the OECS Commission. Today, we have a very distinguished panelist, and they would make their presentation to you at a maximum time of 7 minutes. And at the end of the presentations, we will have questions and answers. So I would like to briefly introduce my panelists so that you can know who will be speaking to you. First of all, we have the distinguished Minister, Kevin James, Minister of Climate Resilience, Environment and Renewable Energy from the government of Grenada. We also have with us Rafael Sueldo, Senior Business Development Manager from OMAC Technologies. We have Philip Julian, Founder and Chairman, Kenneth J. Green Team, and Maria Rangal, Head of Geothermal Resources, EDA Renault Waris. We also have with us Eugene Tia, who's the CEO of Caribbean Energy Chamber. And also, finally, we have Raul Hidalgo, Technical Advisor of Gran Canary Geothermia. So this panel is here to share with you on this very important topic of charting a pathway, a roadmap to a geothermal future. And of course, we know in terms of geothermal development, there are a number of technical barriers to implementing geothermal energy. However, there are also unique solutions that we can have in relation to accelerating or pushing forward the development agenda as it relates to geothermal energy. So at this point in time, we are going to invite the various speakers to make a presentation to us in the order as listed. I just want to ensure that you enjoy the discussions, and remember to place your questions in the question and answer box so that we can have a fruitful discussion at the end of the presentation. So at this time, I would invite the Honorable Karine James, Minister of Climate Resilience, Environment and Renewable Energy, to address us. Karine James.
The minister's not able to join the session just yet, so if we could just go to the next speaker and hopefully she'll join us shortly.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we will move right along. Raphael, you are next in terms of your presentation. So I invite you now to give us your input in relation to this particular topic. You would have been in the private sector, so I would imagine that you would have very important insight in relation to the private sector companies and the solution to island-specific situation and the type of emerging technologies or financial models that can be applied to the island state as they develop their geothermal energy. Welcome.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Ernie, and many thanks for having me here. So my name is Raphael Suedlo. I'm Director of International Business Development at Ormat, responsible for all the business development activities in Africa, North America, and the Caribbean. The company that I work for has a unique approach where we are manufacturing the equipment that we're going to operate and also operate geothermal power plants. So we do a fully vertically integrated development, starting from the very initial surface exploration up to the drilling, the construction of a power plant, and then later on the operation for the duration of a contract, of a power purchase agreement. Now, the company has just celebrated 60 years. And so it has given the opportunity to have experience in a lot of different environments, starting from the United States, Western United States, but also in Central America, in the Caribbean, in Guadeloupe and Dominica, in Africa, in Kenya, in Southeast Asia. So all those different sets have different initial conditions for developing geothermal projects. Now, when we are looking on island project, volcanic islands, where we do have a hint of a geothermal reservoir, the approach is different than, let's say, the United States or a European country, where you have a lot of interconnections, where you have a lot of consumptions, where the grid behaves differently. When you are on an island, the approach is both technical, so the possibility to find a suitable reservoir at a temperature, at an acidity level that is suitable for geothermal exploitation, and also from a commercial perspective. So is there an interconnection nearby? Is there a consumption that can consume the electricity that's going to be produced for the first stage? Now, the geothermal energy worldwide, geothermal power plants have always been developed in incrementals. That's kind of an approach that differs geothermal energy to regular power plants. For instance, when a country decides to develop a fossil fuel-based power plant, can decide to have a 550 megawatt power plant, 330, according to the needs that the grid will need in the future. In geothermal, the well field will dictate how much you have, and you need to have a first drilling campaign. And after you learn how the reservoir responds to that, you can incrementally increase your surface equipment to reach the maximum output that this geothermal field can sustainably provide. So also for the islands, the approach is always an exploratory and incremental approach where There are firstly several wells that have been done, checking the permeability of the resource, checking the temperature, checking the chemistry and the presence of NCGs, and then slowly expanded it. So it has some constraint in terms of time to market, but it's a good way to have a development done in a safe and sustainable manner. I would give an example. The first well in Guadeloupe has been drilled in the 60s, and the development of that resource is still ongoing. So it started with a 5 megawatt power plant, grew up to 15. Now this year it's going to grow to 25, and we are looking forward to have it grow more in the future as we continue to learn the resource, continue to learn the behavior and the different scenarios, and understand that it can sustain further drilling. So the general approach is incremental, and from a perspective of the private sector, the private sector will fulfill the opportunities wherever the regulatory framework provide place for it. So when a country give the rules for development and the incentives for the high risk, then the private sector can fill in it. Now, it will be a decision of the government how fast they want to have a development. If a government has money and has time, it can do it on its own. Whatever it does not have time, they would turn to the private sector. Or alternatively, if they don't have the fund or want to use the fund for other activities, then also it turns to the private sector. So there are various methods of addressing the private sectors, but that's usually where we will come in and do a partnership with the local government, with the off-takers to develop geothermal power plants. So I am here. If you have any question, do not hesitate to ask me here in the chat.
Thank you, Raphael. And of course, you gave us a very good start, a very good taste of the approach that you are taking in relation to geothermal development in the Caribbean. You're making reference to the technical approach, the commercial approach, and also that it should be incremental, which is also very important as you learn more and more about the resource. And also you make mention of partnership, which is very important in order for the geothermal development to take place. It's a very big undertaking, and I'm sure with your experience, and your approach, you will be successful. Okay, at this point in time, we'll move on. I'm just checking on Minister Karine James to find out if she is available as yet. I know the Honorable Minister is very busy. If not, we can move on to the next speaker, Philip. I would invite you now to make your presentation in the allotted time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's a pleasure to be invited to this forum, and I'm going to set my timer just to make sure I honor the 7 minutes. What I hope to do is just provide a brief context to the answer of a couple of questions that were posed, which I'll present on the screen here. And it's really from the context of, what, as a project developer, what have we experienced in these two particular areas in terms of early stage project development, some of the lessons learned that we've experienced, benefited from, and learned from in the development of geothermal energy projects in the Caribbean. And how can some of these islands create an enabling condition to attract these early stage, some might call pioneering projects? So if I were to leave you with the answer early o'clock, in case I run out of time, this has been our experience of 3 key components: country vision, early development funding, and an expanded market consideration. To give a bit more of a backdrop, for those of you who don't know, Kenneth J. Green, or KGL, we're Caribbean-grown green energy project origination development firm, and we focus on making green energy projects bankable in the Caribbean. This is predominantly linked to projects relating to green electrons, green hydrogen, and those derivatives, which are more commonly known as Power-to-X projects. And a couple of the examples that we're working on in the Caribbean are located in two countries. The first is a green ammonia project that we've been undertaking a pre-feasibility study for the government of Dominica, as well as early development of considerations of Power-to-X projects for St. Kitts and Nevis, courtesy one of our partners with ANSA Macau. Now, Dominica is an example of the country vision that we met. They approached us following the work that we were doing in Trinidad on the New Gen Green Hydrogen project, with a very clear vision of what they wanted to see happen for their country. And that was creating a green energy, green hydrogen economy. On the backbone of their vision, we were able to develop a country assessment report, which allowed us to get early buy-in from the key stakeholders of Dominica as to what good looked like for that country in that space. And it landed on initially the green ammonia project that we're currently developing. That led to a very structured approach that the government of Dominica already had in place as to how to proceed in a way that would maximize the early fund attraction from the multi-development banks, whether it be CAF, IDB, CDB. And we just followed their framework, which has led to a framework agreement being signed. And now the next step is for us to start developing joint ventures and special purpose vehicles, all in service of this vision, this plan that the government of the Commonwealth of Dominica had in place. So that's a key takeaway. And again, this is an example or a summary of the various Power-to-X pathways that we developed in the country assessment report that ultimately led to the government agreeing to the green ammonia development. And just to put this in context to the excellent work that ORMAT is doing in Roseau Valley, which is leading to a 10 megawatt facility coming on stream later this year, as I understand. We're focusing on the northwest part of the country in Portsmouth for this Power-to-X project. The second aspect is that early development funding. You know, this is what you'd call high risk type work when you're conceptualizing projects. And with St. Kitts and Nevis, we were all aware of their tremendous geothermal resource. And with the partnership of ANSA Macau, we were able to take a deeper dive as to some of the possible markets or opportunities that their geothermal resource could be used for. And this has become very valuable in helping the country define what they could do with this as the next incremental geothermal development for St. Kitts and Nevis, originating from the Nevis asset. This kind of then talks to the final and most important, I would say, component as to what shifted, what allows these type of conversations to happen now that can accelerate the development of these projects. And the fundamental word is this green energy, these green energy commodities are now sought after on an international market, as well as regional. And that is a paradigm shift and a game changer, because once you have a market, a global market at your disposal, it allows the economies of scale, the larger projects to be developed, for their commerciality to be improved, and for these projects to attract private sector investment and public sector support. And just to leave you with what I like to call the tic-tac-toe of the Caribbean in terms of regional energy opportunities, If you keep in mind that green ammonia, green methanol are sought after international commodities, as well as the regional energy security of being able to create e-fuels, including those commodities as a shipping fuel, you begin to light up the whole Caribbean in a very interesting way. We talked to Dominica, who of course has talked in the past to exporting excess geothermal to neighboring countries, as well as the green ammonia production that we talked about. We also talked to St. Kitts and Nevis being a significant supply center for adjacent demand areas such as Antigua or St. Martin, who have a large demand in front of them for the shipping industry. And last and certainly not least is the possibility of this expanding to Grenada and then encircling Trinidad, creating an opportunity for true regional and global export possibilities with the repurposing of some of Trinidad's petrochemical sector to create green ammonia and green methanol using imported green energy from the rest of the Caribbean. That's it for me. Thank you very much for the opportunity and the time, and happy to take questions when the schedule permits. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you very much, Philip, for your wonderful presentation, sharing with us various important elements has to do with the vision. And of course, we know that geothermal is not possible without that vision, that roadmap that various member states and countries and islands have established. And you also spoke about the funding, which is critical. Without the funding, nothing can happen. And of course, we know that there are a lot of exciting things that are happening right now in the OECS, in particular, Dominica. And we know that Guadeloupe has already have a plant, but they're also looking at expanding that capacity. So we have quite a bit of excitement happening. And one of the things that I like about your presentation is the bringing out of the benefits of geothermal in terms of the base load power, 24/7, that is available, and also not only in terms of electricity generation, but also the cascading systems and benefits, the direct uses, the power to X, the green hydrogen, the ammonia, and desalination and food security, etc. So it is a very important resource, and I'm sure the island will continue on this long journey, but fruitful journey towards realizing their dream of geothermal energy. At this time, we are going to move on to our next speaker, Maria. As usual, you will speak within 7 minutes, and we are hoping that in your presentation you will share with us, what has been the experience of developing and operating geothermal in the Azores, and what unique geological and logistical challenges you face in terms of addressing issues as you develop geothermal energy. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. I suppose you are seeing the presentation.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, okay, so I'm glad and I'm really grateful for this invitation. It is a pleasure to share the geothermal project in the Azores Islands, and I hope you enjoy this. So for the ones that don't know where the Azores, we belong to the Republic of Portugal, but we are an archipelago located on the North Atlantic Ocean, more or less at 1,600 kilometers apart from Portugal mainland. And we are an archipelago composed by 9 islands, where the 2 most populated islands are the ones that I have put a red circle in, which is São Miguel, where I'm speaking from, and Terceira. In total, we are talking about 236,000 inhabitants, but 56% of this population lives in São Miguel, and 23 in Terceira Island, and the remaining inhabitants live in the other islands. In what concerns geology and geotectonic setting, we are in a very privileged, a very advantaged spots in our Earth, in our planet. We are precisely in the triple junction of three main tectonic plates, the American, the Eurasian, and the Nubia or African. So that's why all our islands are volcanic in nature. We have active volcanism, except in one of the islands which is already extincted, which is Santa Maria. But in all the islands, these volcanoes are active, although dormant. And there is, as you can see on the slide, lots of superficial manifestations of this heat, of this resource that lies in depth. So in the beginning on the 70s, the Azorian entities and the studies, universities all together start to implement different studies, different exploratory surveys, up to a point that they discover, or we discovered, a deep high enthalpy geothermal reservoir, liquid dominated, with 240 degrees centigrades, and which could be intersected with wells, by drilling wells with 1 to 1.5 kilometers. So a very quite shallow and productive reservoir. So the first pilot plant was installed in Pico Vermelho sector, but 10 years from then, like our previous colleague from Ormat, there was incremental steps on the project. So in the 90s, the project suffered a little bit a dislocation for the most southern part of the field. And in 1994, we installed two RC groups of 2.5 megawatts each. And later on, 4 years later, more two groups of 4 megawatts, totalizing 13 megawatts. Nowadays, Ribeira Grande power plant is supplied by water and steam from 4 production wells. At this moment, one of the wells is not producing, it's shut down. And after this heat exchange on the power plant, because we are talking about binary technology installed, all the fluid is re-injected again inside the reservoir. Later on, in 2006, our pilot plant in Pico Vermelho sector was dismantled, was obsolete, although it was a very important tool to learn about the reservoir at that time in the 80s. So in 2006, this pilot plant was dismantled and a 10 megawatt binary ORC cycle, ORC power plant was installed. Again, this part of the field, the reservoir is quite shallow. It's very productive. So we are very lucky in this part of the field, where we basically just need the production from 3 wells to completely saturate these 10 megawatts. Again, all the fluid is re-injected again inside the reservoir. Our plans and all this investment is being supported by the recovery and resilience plan that Europe has. We plan to increment geothermal to more than 50% in the island of São Miguel by expanding Pico Vermelho power plant, as you can see in the slide below. So a new power plant of 12 megawatts will be built next to the one that exists nowadays. And also we are going to repower, we are going to refurbish some of the old groups of Ribeira Grande power plants. And of course, all of this is only possible because in 2020, we began a drilling campaign. We drilled 6 new wells between 2020 to 2021, and then we flow test those wells in order to understand the chemical characteristics of the fluid, the enthalpy, and calculate the power that we could install. but we are very eager to reach these numbers in 2027. I would say I have here two slides just to resume what are the benefits of geothermal, and these benefits we can prove it here in the Azores. We can day by day we face them because the resource is always available. We all know that the heat of the earth does not depend on the season of the year, the time of the day, so it's all the time there if your reservoir is productive, of course. It is reliable, so it allows a constant and stable production. That is why it fulfills the base of a load diagram. It is an indigenous source, so we can decrease our importation of fuel from the mainland. Clearly, it reduced the carbon footprint. We are not burning fossil fuel, although the geothermal power plants with binary technology releases NCGs, but we are basically accelerating something that naturally occurs, for example, in fumaroles that are around the power plant, for example. It contributes to the diversification of the energy sources in the Azores, and it strengthens our autonomy, our self-sufficiency, and our resilience in what concerns energy. It promotes the name of the Azores in what concerns energy transition and sustainability, and it creates jobs and develops technical skills. I would say that the major challenges to develop a geothermal project is the fact that, for example, the 9 islands of the Azores, they cannot be intercommunicated between themselves. Our oceanic crust has big valleys, deep valleys, so technically it's very challenging to put cables between the islands. So each island is an electrical system, individually independent. So for example, if I could have access of geothermal in São Miguel and could export to another island, but that cannot be. And geothermal cannot correspond to peak demands. That's why it's important to boost the demand in order to have the projects to be increased in the islands. Also in islands, projects under 10 megawatts tend not to be economical feasible. There is a risk always associated with geothermal. And of course, only after drilling and flow test, I'm sure I have more control of the power that I will be able to install. And geothermal projects take time. So it can take 10 to 15 years from the first time I do a survey to I do exploratory up to the first kilowatt. So, but putting the scale, I think the benefits, they clearly overcome this challenge that are completely suitable. And our project is an example of that. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Maria, for such comprehensive sharing of information as it relates to the Azores. And, you said something that is very, very important. It is worth it. It's a long journey, but it is worth it. And you shared with us the benefits, the availability, the reliability that is an indigenous resource. And it, of course, reduces our carbon footprint, and it helps in terms of diversifying our economies as well as the energy mix within the country. So thank you very much for such a comprehensive presentation. And on that note, we would move to Eugene, and Eugene will share with us what is the appetite for geothermal in the Caribbean energy mix. We were just talking about the mix. Maria spoke about the mix. And so we are looking forward to hearing from you about the mix and how can the private sector collaborate with governments and multilaterals to de-risk projects. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Ernie. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure presenting alongside this very esteemed panel. So the approach that I've taken really is, and what the Energy Chamber is taking, is to take a big step back from all that is happening in the renewable energy space, including geothermal, and I'll speak specifically on geothermal, and to look at this in the context of horizons, meaning what is focused on in the short, medium, and long term. So when we look at geothermal, what we see based on development times, complexity, risk, and other factors, in the short term, we think that the focus should be very much on meeting countries' power needs incrementally. So as the resource is developed, the first opportunity and the first action should be focused on the country's power needs. Thereafter, once those needs are substantially met, and those could include some projects that relate to country needs, for example, desalination and other types of projects like that. But then thereafter is when you could then start considering longer term opportunities. For example, if there is sufficient resource, then could some of the electrical power be exported to adjacent islands? And then we see the last horizon, which is really long term and which we see as blue sky opportunities, is really an advancement to into spaces like Power to X and other opportunities. And I'll kind of spend a little time sharing what shaped our views, particularly with regard to short, medium, and long-term opportunities for geothermal. So a lot of our work has been based on information that has been readily available in the public domain. And we know that each project is unique, and particularly geothermal projects are quite unique. But a lot of the literature is suggesting, based on the various scales, based on the various types of technologies, that levelized costs in the range of 7 cents to 11 cents per kilowatt hour are achievable. And if we kind of look at the various sources, so if you look at that Lazard source, Lazard report, which was a 2025 report, and this is version 18, so you could tell how long they have been at this. They have kind of looked at and provided in detail a lot of the variables that drive the economics for geothermal. And of course, in this slide is compared against wind and solar. And you'd see what factors have been considered in arriving at these ranges in terms of levelized costs of electricity that can be produced from geothermal, and they use the term a lot at the tailgate, right? So as to be distinct from what is actually delivered to consumers, which needs to include the costs of transportation and distribution. Another useful source has been in the public domain is actually private sector projects that have been developed, and they have actually published PPAs. And when we look at those PPAs for those projects, which is produced and documented by NREL, we see that you could have a range, again, consistent with the work done by Lazard, of a range of about 70 cents to as high as 7 cents per kilowatt hour to as high as 11 cents per kilowatt hour. So that seems to be right now, based on where the technology is, that kind of output in terms of electrical costs or levelized costs of electricity seems to be realistic and achievable. And that bodes well, we think, for the Caribbean islands, where if we were to look at the OECS countries, where currently electricity prices are multiples of those numbers. Now, when we start to look a little deeper into, and again, driving our thinking, we looked at the using geothermal energy to produce green hydrogen. And when we look at that and look at all of the variables, again, based on data that is available, we see that, on a base case level, we're looking at just about 7.5 cents $7.5 per kilogram as a cost of producing hydrogen. That relative to the cost of hydrogen for producing commodities like ammonia and so is high. And a lot of the literature is suggesting that you have to really get below $4 per kilogram for hydrogen for it to be cost competitive. Now, the other slide here kind of shows current data. So Platts is a publication entity, and they are continuously publishing data. And I'm using here one example, which is really anhydrous ammonia as a potential end use for power from geothermal. And if you look at the types of ammonia that are currently produced in the world market, you will see that if you look at gray ammonia, which is produced from natural gas with no penalty for carbon, the current prices are around $550 to $560 per ton. And then if you look at green ammonia, you'd see that it is roughly, and these are published numbers, about $837 per ton. If you look at it on an elemental basis and you look at trying to build up the cost from the components that are used to manufacture green ammonia, and you look at hydrogen costs at $4 per kilogram and the amount of hydrogen that is used to produce a ton of anhydrous ammonia, you'll see how the cost is built up and how you get close to that $800 number. The other useful bit of information to compare against is anhydrous ammonia as a fuel. And if you look at what data, again, that is being published by Argus, you'll see that right now, on a cost on an energy unit basis, green ammonia is roughly 3 times or over 3 times the cost of hydrocarbon-based fuels with carbon penalties. So the key point here is there's a gap that needs to be closed for these products to be competitive. And therefore, this is why we are casting them as in the long term rather than in the short term. So we see that if there is a limited amount of resources that are available, the sensible thing seems to be focused very much on meeting electrical power needs. And if there is available resource for developing some of these projects, only then kind of focus on them because they really have a very long horizon looking forward. So in conclusion, we are saying, again, geothermal looks very attractive for the Caribbean for electrical power compared to particularly for the OECS countries compared to the next best alternative currently, which is multiple times higher than the cost of generating from geothermal. We think that the focus should be on driving for capital efficiency and cost of financing opportunities to push those down. And then we see if there is resource available because of the long gestation period of these power tax opportunities, only then should some resources be allocated to those types of opportunities. So I'll end there. This is our kind of long perspective and how we've chosen to kind of frame the opportunities in horizons looking forward so that everyone, when they're discussing that, is kind of very clear as to what is short, medium, and long term for the Caribbean.
Excellent. Eugene, thank you for presenting in this format that, we have to be practical. We're looking at the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And indeed, the short term is to generate base load electricity, and the medium term, then we think of other matters, while at the same time, we have a roadmap, a pathway to a geothermal future. At this time, we are going to have our presentation, another presentation from Raul, and he would also share with us based on his experience, but he would also answer the question, what lessons can Gran Canaria learn in assessing and piloting geothermal potential, and how important is community engagement local technical capacity in island-based projects. Welcome, Raul. It's all yours.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to give you a small presentation about this early stage exploration geothermal project. Compared with some of the projects we are talking, like Maria, for instance, in the Azores, we are in a very early stage, of course, but I think it's very challenging, and we hope in the future. I heard at the beginning of the presentation that next year this summit is going to take place in Gran Canaria. So I hope by that time we will be advancing a little more in the project. But anyway, we are going to present you a little. I will ask Christian if he can share the slide of the first slide. They bring them, and it's basically to explain you about where we are in the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands, if some people probably not aware, is an archipelago which is located at northwest of close to the northwest of Africa, and is defined by the only place in Spain with capacity to host high temperature geothermal projects. I don't know if it's possible to have this slide, Christian, the first slide. Well, if not, I continue. Will be better just to. Thank you very much. Okay, so you can see in the image there the position of the Canary Islands related to the Africa continent, and Gran Canaria Island is one of the 8 islands of the archipelago, and it probably is a little different. The situation of these islands, or the status of this island compared with other archipelagos, as these are very populated islands, especially Gran Canaria. Bear in mind, this is about 1 million people resident, plus another 5 million tourists per year. So it's a significant demand of power in the island, and the island, as other islands, is depending in more than 75% from fossil fuels. Just 25% of the energy is coming from renewables, which is significant in any case, I had to say. And also it's an isolated energy system. So the studies on the potential, that means that this island is probably is a perfect place to be fitted with geothermal energy, which is base load energy, and which is manageable and dispatchable energy. The challenge now is to find the resource. Several studies have been done in the past, especially starting in the 70s of the late of the 20th century, and this is just when the first big worldwide oil crisis, as you remember. Many countries start to see for the possibility of having their own indigenous energy sources, and that was making that in Spain, the Geological Survey of Spain was undertaking studies, as in other countries, to see this potential of different energies, including the geothermal. So they defined that the Gran Canaria Island and the other islands in the Canary Archipelago are suitable to have this high temperature geothermal energy. And they start some studies, but once the crisis finished of the energy, then everything was stopped. And that is more or less to nowadays, when the things are changing a little because of the lobbying of the last years, different groups in Spain trying to demonstrate that this is necessary to develop this potential of the geothermal, and convincing the federal authorities and European authorities to get some grants for just the risk in these early stages of the geothermal energy. And that is where our project is starting. It's starting that almost a year ago, and the project at the moment is about with a budget of 30 million euros, of which the grants from the Next Generation program from the European Union are going to cover the half of that. We're going to cover 50% of that. And we are starting just with these early exploration studies. The group which is making the initiative is a group which is formed by the local government of the Canary Island, of the Gran Canaria Island, which is the Consejo Insular de la Energía de Gran Canaria, like the Energy Council of Gran Canaria, is having the majority of the project. And then the other three groups which are in the projects are the a drilling group from UK and another two local groups. Can you have the next slide, Christian? So this is basically the position of the license that has been granted by the administration to us late December last year. And you are asking about the lessons we are learning, more than lessons, because we are very early stage. I will say the challenges that we have at the moment. No, the first challenge is the risk mitigation mechanisms, which, as I am explaining before, we are just covering with these grants from the Next Generation program. Then we have some technical challenges at the moment, which is, for instance, that this island, as I explained in the beginning, is a very dense populated area, dense populated island, and then it's a lot of ambient noise. So for all this early exploration we are doing, we had to adapt some of the techniques of exploration techniques to try to avoid this ambient noise and to try to have good results from the anomalies that from what we are obtaining from the data from the field data. So this is one of the first challenges we are finding. Just to give you an example, for instance, we are having the time, for instance, to do the magnetotelluric surveys. We are obtaining at the moment something like 48 hours per station in order to avoid this noise, while just the standard measurement is something like 24 hours. So it's something that we are just trying to innovate. No? And then, of course, we have also some kind of challenges with the environment as well, because 50% of the island is covered by highly protective environmental zones, and then we are trying just to avoid these areas for the exploration, obviously. So this is basically showing you the areas where we are finding initially the initial anomalies, which is basically anomalies of geochemistry and anomalies from the magnetotelluric, and with that information, preliminary information is with the one we are just deciding on the area where we are focusing now the detailed exploration program. We believe it's very important the community, the local community engagement, and that's why this project is participated by the public sector, as I mentioned at the beginning. Is controlled 50% by the Cabildo de Gran Canaria, which is the local government. And we are understanding that when we go in the field and we are doing our sampling, the local community perception and acceptance is very important for us. And this is working well when they see that you are coming on behalf of the local government, and also that we have some investigation groups, local investigation groups, which are doing a fantastic work with geochemical research. And these groups are learning a lot, and also are exporting this technology to other countries and to other geothermal fields. And I think still, of course, we have the challenge to increase the skills to other techniques or to other important areas of the geothermal, like the drilling, but that will be taking place in further if the exploration is succeeding and when we are just passing to the next stage, if you like. No, but still we are in the very early stage, and we hope we can give you good news on the progress in the following presentations.
Thank you very much, Raul, for your presentation. Very practical challenges, as you call them, not lessons, in terms of bringing along the community. That is very critical. And also, you spoke about environmental and social safeguard is necessary, and something as simple as noise level, which is also critical when we come to island states. You also mentioned about de-risking the projects, and that this is a common thread in the presentation. Geothermal is risky, and it's important to have the de-risking aspect being done. So we now move into the final session in relation to questions and answers. And I'm reading one of the questions here from Malian. How can private sector installation and engineering companies in the region be engaged to build local capacity for geothermal deployment instead of outsourcing most of the technical work? So that's a very important question. I would ask the panelists to chime in. Maybe we can start with Raphael. I don't know if he has any input in relation to that aspect, and then followed by Philip, Maria, and Eugene and Raul as per presentation, if you have any input in relation to this particular question.
Okay, so hello.
Yes, I'm hearing you. Yes.
So the private sector can be brought in at several phases of project. Can either be at the very greenfield phase where surface exploration needs to be done, or at a later phase where the project has been de-risked. And there are certain levels of de-risking. So whatever it is, shallow wells, slim holes, after that a full-size well that has been done, more well testings and interference tests that has been done. So firstly, the government need to decide how much it want to de-risk the project itself. So they want to have it 100% on the private sector, or they want to de-risk it, and in counterparty have better term from the private sector. So I think that is the first step that public entities needs to mark as where exactly the private sector gets in and starts to take the risk of developing the project.
Thank you. I guess we can get some input from Maria.
Yes, our experience in the Azores, because as you saw, our dimension is very small. EDA Renewables is a company that belongs to the regional power utility of the Azores, which is owned 50.1% by the government. And I really would say that in order to develop geothermal, you need to believe in it and be resilient, meaning that our project in the beginning, and I would say like the first 20 years since the 70s up to maybe late 90s, the company that was exploring EDA Renewables was mostly on bankruptcy. But because we were integrated in this public entity, and the government, the policy of the government to keep investing, even nowadays, because we are also exploring, although São Miguel Island is a very successful project, but only turn 180 degrees with the installation of the 10 megawatt Pico Vermelho power plant, so in 2005. Up to there, the accounts or the returns were not very positive, and we would say that the project would be on the red line. So in 2005, where we duplicate from the 13 megawatts to 23 megawatts, there the project starts to be important, to be robust, and to be nowadays a very successful project in São Miguel Island. But we are dealing with many problems in the other island, Terceira, where the reservoir is not so permeable. So the revenue and the results are not so good. So from my experience and hearing the Azores, the private sector, it's not very engaged with the product. It's not very engaged at all, because I don't think nobody in the Azores from the private sector would be willing to accommodate the risk and the investment that you need to put with this type of risk. So probably in bigger areas where this private tissue is stronger, but anyway, that's the real thing in geothermal. It's the risk of the first steps of the project.
Thank you. Yes. Next, do you have any input, Eugene, in relation to this particular question?
Yeah, I think Maria has made some really good distinctions, right, with regard to private sector appetite and for risk. And I think early stage developments clearly seem to be a lot more risky, and later stage developments are probably where private sector's appetite may be better matched. I think during the early stage developments, there could be opportunities for local service companies. I see this as a very specialized area, right? So I have a technical background, and I see that, given the cutting edge nature of this type of work, particularly with regard to the geotechnical work, to the drilling and all of that, I see that as a domain where there's very limited amount of expertise in the Caribbean on that. Possibly in Trinidad and Tobago has some drilling expertise, but that's where it ends. On the side of the power plant and construction of the power plant, and so I do see more opportunities for local workforce and things like that, and for some contracted services. But again, I see it still being the domain of specialized EPC contractors that have the expertise to manage such complex projects and to be able to deliver them within budget, etc.
Very important points. And Raul, do you have any addition to what is being said?
Just to say that in the case of Canary Islands, the local research groups like in Volcan, or they are growing a lot. They are learning a lot with a European project tool, for instance, which is just the European grant monies, just to work together the public with the private initiatives, and from that, with this mechanism, these groups are learning a lot, and then they are able to provide it with this kind of services to other areas. No? So I think it's important to, as well, Maria is telling also, that you need some kind of support from the government and to have these monies in order to develop the skills.
No? Thank you. I'm not sure if we have a lot more time available to take additional question, but we do have one. Another question, and perhaps in answering that question, you can do your wrap up quickly so that we can hand it over to our good friends at Island Innovation. The question says, and it's from Terry Thibault Diouf, said, considering Caribbean's pressing need for energy independence and climate resilience, what are the potential applications of diverse ocean energy solutions, including ocean thermal energy in the region, particularly in countries like Grenada and St. Kitts and Nevis, and how can these contribute to a sustainable energy future? Furthermore, which public entities, both regional and international, are positioned to participate in bringing such projects to fruition, and what role do they typically play? So a mouthful questions. So make it short as time is upon us, but anyone can chime in at this point in time.
Yeah, I don't have very much experience in
Yes,
ocean thermal technology.
Maybe I can jump in and saying that the first look would be on the LCOE of the technology to be developed. So what makes sense in an economic way, what has already been proven. So we're not talking about new innovation that has not been proven. And secondly, the impact on the grids. So intermittent energy would have a different impact and have collateral costs that are usually not seen. And in insular systems do have an impact that needs to be considered. So the main driver would be the cost of that energy to be developed. Base loads that is both renewable, sustainable, clean energy, you would find mostly only in geothermal, the geothermal electricity production.
Yeah, Raul, you wanted to say something on that? No. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I think time is against us anyway. And I just want to express sincere thanks and gratitude to all the panelists. You have done a fantastic job in relation to handling this particular topic. The first question about capacity from a technical point of view, but also we have to bear in mind that we have to build capacity from a human point of view, because what will happen eventually is that the Caribbean and the Azores will have a vibrant geothermal industry, and it is good to have capacity both from a technical point of view and from a human point of view. So thank you very much, and thank Island Innovation. I will now hand over to Michaela. Take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ernie. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our fantastic speakers for such an insightful discussion. It's very fitting as a continuation of the conversations that we had earlier this year at the Geothermal Energy Forum in Nevis. So definitely great to see so many attendees here as well. For those of you who may have missed it, yesterday during our opening session, we announced that we are partnering with the Cabildo of Gran Canaria to host the Global Sustainable Island Summit 2026. After this year's experience in St. Kitts and Nevis, now the Macaronesian region and Europe will take the spotlight. The summit will be held from April 20th to the 23rd, 2026, and we will be discussing solutions in advancements in terms of island sustainability. So definitely be sure to purchase your tickets. We do have a special discount code that's being made available in the chat for you now to take a quick look at. Next session will be teaching inside the box. So this is on flipping the narrative on island education, and that's coming up in just under 1 hour. So thank you all once again, and we'll